So, hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. I am Kamran Mirza, your host for today's discussion, and we are thrilled to have you join us for this important session organized by IDRAK Foundation. As you know, IDRAK is dedicated to fostering intellectual rigor, historical awareness, and civic engagement, especially among Muslim youths and scholars who are navigating contemporary India. So, thank you all for joining in. Thank you so much for being here. Uh, all right. So today we are truly honored to host a very special guest, Mr. Ziya Salam Saab, and it's my pleasure to introduce him. Mr. Ziya Salam is a senior journalist and a very well-known social commentator, currently serving as associate editor at the Hindu. Over the past 2 decades, he has become one of the most insightful chroniclers of the evolving socio-political landscape of Indian Muslims. His extensive body of work includes notable titles like Saffron Flag and Skullcaps, Till Talaq Do Us Part, Lynch File. I have the copy of Lynch File with me. I'll be reading this soon. Women in Masjid, Inside the Tablighi Jamaat, Madrasas in the Age of Islamophobia, Shaheen Bagh, From Protest to a Movement, just to name a few. His latest book, Being Muslim in Hindu India, A Critical View, arrives at a very moment of immense tension when the questions of identity, belonging, and citizenship for Muslims in India have been redefined both formally and informally. So, Mr. Salam, thank you so much for joining us for your continued contribution to the public discourse. Pleasure
Thank
to
you
have
for
you.
having me.
Pleasure. So let's start, or maybe like before we start on the book itself. Before we delve into the core themes of the book, could you begin by sharing a bit of your own personal and intellectual journey, your early life, your education, your formative influences that shape your analytical lens as both a journalist and as an author?
Kamran bhai, I'm a Delhi guy, born and brought up in Delhi, but wherever I have been, I have found myself to be a bit of an outsider.
Okay.
My late father was a mufti, and he was liberal enough to get me education in a public school rather than sending me to a madrasa. I remember as a little boy running to the neighborhood mosque when I was 5, 6 years old in something only a little better than shorts and maybe 3/4 or something like that. And the Maulana over there would often stop me. I was fulfilling all the criteria for namaz, like I had a shirt on and 3/4 on, so my knees were covered. And often the Maulanas would stop and say in Urdu, Beta pajama pehenkar aaya karo namaz ke liye. That was the first sign that there was something wrong with us when the Maulanas come up with their own interpretation of Islam, contrary to what we are supposed to be doing. And then my house was next to a mosque and mosque and madrasa, where often the talk by their imams and more often others who had come to preach over there was done with the idea of instilling a fear of Allah rather than love for Allah. As I grew up and I understood from my late father and mother, there was ample scope in Islam for loving Allah, and fear was secondary to that. If you love somebody, you obey that person or that being. So that was among the early things. But I was a bit of a naughty kid. As I said, a bit of an outsider. My father would expect me to go to the mosque, which I did. But I also had a little bit of an erratic young boy who would sneak out time to go and buy Patriot newspaper every Sunday. For those who are not accustomed and for those not from my generation, Patriot used to be a leftist newspaper in Delhi in the 70s when I was growing up. I would get 1 rupee pocket money from my father every Sunday, and I'll go and buy Patriot newspaper, which was of 50 paise from that money, which is a bit unusual for a kid who was just 8, 9, or 10 years old to be doing that. And the reason I bought Patriot was not because I was inclined towards leftist ideology. I didn't have the most remote idea what was leftism, what was right wing politics, or any such thing. I used to buy Patriot newspaper for its 4-page advertisements of Hindi cinema, of the films running in the city. Because my father said films are an absolute no at home. There was no way we could talk of film, forget about watching a film. And I would satisfy my lust for cinema by pouring through those advertisements over and over again. And obviously, I would hide it from my father. I'll wait for him to go to his madrasa in the morning and then read it and hide it under my mattress by the time he would come back after Zohar. And that fascination for cinema led to a book I did some 10, 12 years ago, Delhi Four Shows. And along the way, never
Could you
intended to, but I ended up becoming a film critic of The Hindu in the year 2000 and continued till 2008. And that was the time I cried halt. I said, enough is enough for this world, let's think of the next world. And there was this, I would say, divine intervention in the sense that once I got a call from Ministry of Information and Broadcasting that my name had been shortlisted for national award. So they told me one day that it is for out of 10 only one guy will get, and then 5 and then 3. And my habit was whenever I would had to seek something from Allah, I'll do my wuzu, open my janamaz and stand and pray 2 nafil for that. I did the same thing that morning, except that I could not offer 2 nafil. My heart did not allow me to ask Allah to make me the best film critic of the country. And that is the day I decided to give up reviewing cinema for The Hindu. I said, if I cannot ask Allah for something, it is not something I should do. So that was a turning point in my life, so to say. There's a long
Wow.
shot.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like from being a film critic to critiquing the entire society. So quite interesting. Thank you. Okay, so as you know, as everyone we are discussing Mr. Ziya Salam latest book, Being Muslim in Hindu India. So my first question would
Latest
be
but one. This book
so
came out in November 2023. Earlier this year, last month, I had a new book, The Lion of Naushera, which is about the life and times of Brigadier Usman, who died fighting Pakistan in 1948.
wow, mashallah, that's great, inshallah. So maybe we'll have discussion on that as well later. So okay, so about this book, inshallah, the book in question, we'll take some questions on that, and we'll try to understand your idea. So, what really catalyzed writing of Being Muslim in Indo-India? Was there a particular event or turning point that convinced you that this book was necessary at this moment? And then as an extension, let me also ask you. It says a critical view. So, are you? What are you primarily interrogating? Is it the state policies, the shift in public discourse, or the internal dynamics within the Muslim community? Yeah.
Kamran sir, see, in the reason why I did this book, you'll get the answer to both the questions. I'm a journalist with The Hindu with more than 25 years with the publication as an associate editor. And The Hindu is probably the most balanced paper, English paper in the country at the moment. But unfortunately, when it came to reporting on assaults on Muslims in various parts of the country, I found the media to a large extent quiet or underplaying the whole thing. There were incidents of disrobing Muslim women of their hijab. There were incidents the Muslim men were lynched across the country, at least in North India and Central India. And there were mosques and madrasas which were bulldozed. The Muslim properties were not left safe either. Muslims' food habits were questioned, their language was questioned, their way of worship was questioned, their very being was being not just questioned, but was under sustained assault. It seemed for a long time that to be a Muslim in contemporary India was a crime. No political party across the political spectrum was ready to use the word Muslim from a public platform. The word Muslim gave way to a more euphemistic minority. Forget the BJP, even the Congress, the DMK, the TMC, the NCP, the Samajwadi, every party avoided using the word Muslim almost like an abuse. That was the time I decided one has to speak up. Because if we do not speak up today, posterity will not forgive us. This was the main reason why I did this book. As we all know, even a little 6-month-old baby has to cry for attention for the mother to suckle the baby. If you want help in contemporary India from any institution, no matter how compromised they are, you have to speak up. This was the idea behind doing the book, and it is a book which has taken a heavy toll on my emotional and mental well being. It was a very difficult book to write, honestly speaking, because it shook me to my most inner being when I had to put together incidents of attacks on mosques, attacks on girls, and the worst was the lynching of Muslim men and the kind of bodies their parents and wives were left with. It seemed the state, if not the state, at least the government, was at war with its own citizens, and Muslims had nowhere to turn to. The only recourse, the only solace came from the fact that all of us are supposed to say at least 17 times a day, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. That was my solace. Otherwise, it was all dark or bleak.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know I have been, like, I had read half through it, and it was really painful to read as well. So I could imagine the process, when you were actually writing, how painful it would have been for you. So thank you for sharing that. In your book, you explore the twin processes of political orphanization and invisibilization of Muslims. Could you delve deeper into these concepts and perhaps provide specific example from recent event or policies that illustrate this
I'll
phenomenon?
take you back in time a little bit, not too much. Again, growing up in Delhi in 70s and 80s, the one term which we often heard was Sarkari Musalman. That the Congress government was there and the Congress government will give some sinecure post to Muslims. Somebody will become a governor somewhere, somebody will become a chairman of a committee, investigation committee, and so on. But nobody had ever reckoned with what is happening in modern India. In 2022, for the first time ever in 75 years after independence, there was not a single Muslim MP in the ruling dispensation. There was not a single Muslim minister. The BJP, the ruling party at the center, had more than 1,000 MLAs across the country and had an overwhelming majority in the parliament. It had space for no Muslim MP in Rajya Sabha, in Lok Sabha, or in any of the Vidhan Sabhas also. What was worse was the opposition parties had taken their clue from the BJP. The Congress, the Samajwadi, the Bahujan Samajwadi Party, the NCP, and the other political parties also started reducing the number of tickets they would give to a Muslim candidate to even contest the elections. You'll be surprised to know the rise of the BJP is from, say, 2014, but the Congress, which has ruled Rajasthan for a long time, has sent only one Muslim MP to Lok Sabha from India's largest state in terms of area. From Gujarat, since late 90s, there has not been a single Muslim MLA. There has not been a single Muslim MP from Delhi in recent years, more than 30 years. Same thing for Orissa. Same thing for Punjab, except for Malerkotla. Same thing in Himachal Pradesh. So it goes on. It's not just the BJP. All the political parties across the country are increasingly shy of giving tickets to Muslims. The reason is they quote the winnability factor. They say if we give a ticket to a Muslim from a seat where Muslims do not enjoy a majority or a decisive say in the outcome, the majority community people, the Hindus, are unlikely to vote for a Muslim candidate. It's a telling indictment of the majority community that a Muslim member doesn't feel comfortable or confident of getting their vote at the time of Lok Sabha or Vidhan Sabha elections. And the only alternative left for them is to look for a seat where Muslims are in a majority. But this is not all. The other aspect is the seats where Muslims had a decisive say are drastically coming down. There has been a reconstitution of our Lok Sabha seats wherein the Muslim vote has been divided between two constituencies. Supposing there was a constituency A with Muslim vote around 47-48%, it was redrawn in such a way that 24-25% of the Muslim vote would remain with constituency A. The other half will go to constituency B, rendering the Muslim vote ineffective. And the third part was wherever Muslims were in a majority in a particular constituency, or where they were in a position to decide the outcome with one or two other social groups, those seats were reserved for scheduled castes. The idea was to minimize the representation of Muslims in the Lok Sabha. At the fourth level, Muslims found their names missing from the electoral rolls. People who had been voting for last 20, 30, 40 years suddenly in 2018 discovered that they could not vote anymore. They were either pronounced dead or the election commission said when we went to their house, the house was locked, whereas those people were still very much living. It started with Karnataka, where every fourth Muslim was disenfranchised in 2018. Then it spilled over to the neighboring Telangana. Then it went to Madhya Pradesh. Finally, it came to Delhi. People living and abiding by all the norms of elections who were eligible to vote, who had in the past voted, had an electoral ID, suddenly found themselves excluded from the voting process. Something Rahul Gandhi also vouchsafed for in his talk yesterday about vote chori in Maharashtra and Karnataka. It started in 2018. So a Muslim, on the one hand, found that he could not vote in elections. If he was lucky and he could vote in elections, chances are the candidate he wanted to choose was not allowed to contest. And if he did vote for finally in the elections, his vote was to have minimal impact to the outcome of the elections. And finally, despite everything, when a Muslim MP made it to Lok Sabha, the BJP MPs made sure that he or she felt not just unwelcome in Lok Sabha, but also intimidated. When a person like Azam Khan from Samajwadi Party, Iqra Hassan from Samajwadi Party, or Asaduddin Owaisi himself, when these people went to take their oath, they were greeted with loud cries of Jai Shri Ram. When was the last time you heard that cry before 2014 in the Lok Sabha of India? I'll ask you that.
It's a scary situation. I mean, you highlighted like three level this problem is going. One at the distribution of seats, where the bureaucratic manipulation and redrawing of the constituency, all three levels. And uh, in addition to this disturbing trend, one more trend you highlight in the book is the economic marginalization of Muslims, whether through informal boycotts, targeted regulation, or the stigmatization of traditional occupations. Yeah, given these factors, how do you assess the long-term socioeconomic consequences of this exclusion on the community as a whole? The
See, the
economic
idea
marginalization.
is to weaken the community at every level. We have had right-wing leaders like Sakshi Maharaj and even Yati Narsingh Anand, who claims to be a priest, preaching economic boycott of Muslims. We had BJP MPs in Delhi preaching economic boycott of Muslims. The latest case is the East Delhi MP, MLA, Negi, who goes around saying the same thing in Parparganj area, asking Muslims to shut shop and asking non-Muslims to buy only from Muslims. In Uttar Pradesh last year, Muslims who are in the meat business, particularly at the local retail level, those who have shops and the shop assistants and the shopkeepers, etc., for 78 days in the year, they were not allowed to conduct their business because the chief minister and the local administration ordered that during Navratra, people cannot eat meat, so you cannot be selling meat. Navratras fall twice a year, 9 days each, so 18 days of working days gone. Then last year, the month of Shravan or Savan, according to Hindu mythology, extended to 59 days, a month extending almost to 2 months, and people were not allowed to open meat shops during that time. It came to 77, 78 days in a year, and Muslims could not sell meat or buy meat. Of course, they could go to some five-star and eat whatever they wanted, But if somebody was a poor Muslim and he was surviving on roadside chicken or roadside biryani, and somebody had a meat business, he was selling at a local level, he was virtually rendered unemployed for more than 2.5 months in a year. And it's the same thing with other industries like the manja industry related to kite, the thread used for flying the kites, that has been impacted. The Zardozi industry of Rampur has been impacted. The Besides the tanneries, all the carpet industry people, the weavers have been affected. Even the sari workers in Banaras, they have been affected. Everywhere there is a concerted attempt to weaken the economy where Muslims are in a majority or in a sizable number. I'll take you back to 2015 and the lynching of Muhammad Akhlaq in Dadri in western UP. It was in September only, so we are almost 10 years into that lynching. The alleged crime was that there was meat of calf at his home and he had slaughtered a cow. That was the allegation, which has not been proved even after 10 years. And Akhlaq had to pay with his life. The hoodlums, Hindutva hoodlums, attacked his house while he was sleeping at home after Eid celebrations. On the first floor of his house, the Hindutva goons attacked his house, broke open the main gate of the house, came up to the first floor, broke open his bedroom door, dragged his body all the way down to the first floor, and then out of the house and then to the town square. They kept hitting him with anything they could lay their hands on, be it a bamboo stick, an iron stick, a hockey stick, or whatever. Finally, when his body was given to his family, more than 26 or 28 bones were broken. When the family was readying the body for the last rites for the burial, when at the time of that ghusl, when they turned the body to the right, they found the bones creaking. When they turned the body to the left to wash it again from that side, they could not do so because all the main bones, the collarbone, the hip bone, the spine, the shoulder, the neck, everything was broken. Finally, they managed to give him a ghusl and bury him. At the same place a few months later, Ravin Sisodia, one of the men accused of murder of Muhammad Akhlaq, died in police custody. His family members and villagers alleged that he died because of police torture. The police claimed that he died a natural death due to dengue. When his body was given to his family members, they refused to cremate him. Finally, the Union Minister for Culture at that time, Mahesh Sharma, went to his house, pacified the villagers, and wrapped the body of the murder-accused Ravin Sisodia in our beloved tricolour before it was sent for the last rites. The message was very clear. You murder a Muslim in the town square in front of 100 people. You are considered a hero by the union minister at the center, and your body is sent for last rites in a national flag, which is an honor reserved for a soldier who sacrifices his life fighting India against Pakistan or China, whatever the case may be. So those were some of the things which stuck in my mind and they still stick in my mind. Unfortunately, nothing much has changed. The only thing which has changed is when Akhlaq died, it made it to page one of every newspaper across the country with a
Yeah.
photograph, and there was follow-up report. There were follow-up reports and everything. Today, when there is a lynching of a Muslim man in any small part of India, be it Jharkhand or Haryana or UP, it is buried in a single column in not more than one or two lines on the inside pages. It is treated with as much importance as the daily weather report. India is at peace with lynching of Muslim men.
So, going to part two of your book, you delve into the phenomenon of historical revisionism and saffronization of history, where facts are selectively reinterpreted to reinforce, majoritarian narratives. So, both from academic and journalistic perspective, how do you see the implication of this trend for younger generation in terms of their historical consciousness, critical thinking, and civic values? And moreover, how This reimagining of the past shaped the evolving conception of national identity and influenced intercommunal dynamics between Muslims and the broader Indian society. Yeah.
Kamran sir, with due respect, I object to the word of reimagination of the past because they are concocting a past. They are not
I would agree to
reimagining
that.
it,
Yeah.
because what is happening today is they are rewriting those things in history books which never existed.
Yeah, true.
Okay, today's history books for seventh and eighth standard students are actually more of mythology books than history books. I'll give you many examples. There are
But
many of
in,
them I've quoted in the book also, but I'll give one very recent example. Having grown up in India and studied in public schools, we had always been told that Jalaluddin Akbar was a very secular, enlightened monarch. He built Ibadat Khana, which was a place for debate and discussion among leaders of different religions, basically Christian priests, Hindu pandits, Maulvis, even Jews and their leaders. It was a very enlightened approach that he took. And we also read about Sulaykul and so on and so forth. So there are certain imaginations of Akbar in the mind of a young man when he read those things. At the same time, we were told that Aurangzeb was all evil. He imposed jizya and he was against music and blah blah blah, all those things, and he was against history. So we developed a feeling, okay, a good Muslim was Akbar and a bad Muslim was Aurangzeb. The reality today is in our history books, there's nothing called a good Muslim. Akbar now, in the latest version of CBSE books, is projected as a villain, the man who oversaw the killing of hundreds of Hindus in Chittor, the man who imposed jizya soon after becoming a monarch. The students are not told about Ibadat Khana. The students are not told about his approach to take all people along at the same time. The students are not told about the presence of Rajputs in his administrations. Some years back, we had Rajnath Singh, a union minister, even saying in an interview that in the battle between Rana Pratap and Akbar, it was Rana Pratap who won Chittor's battle. The media did not question him. Most of the academics, barring the left-wing academics, did not question him. How come if Rana Pratap did indeed defeat Akbar, the Mughal Empire continued from the 16th century to 1857? People have stopped asking normal everyday questions in India. The idea is you accept whatever the government or their so-called historians are saying. We had this very stupid and ridiculous claim by a BJP leader in Western UP, Sangeet Som, who said Taj Mahal was built by a man who tortured his father, who killed his father. He got mixed up between Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. At another time, he said it was actually a Shiva temple. Very recently, somebody tried to offer Hindu puja over there, and they were allowed to do their puja, and only after the puja concluded were they arrested for a token few minutes and then released. That is the reality. Today, when a kid in a public school reads his so-called history books, there is hardly any mention of the Mughals. In fact, there's hardly any mention of Muslim rulers beyond the Sultanate kings. There also, the effort is to project people like Alauddin Khilji, who united the country basically from Delhi to Deccan as just warriors and bloodthirsty tyrants. There's hardly any mention of all the good things the Mughals did. There's no mention of Persian and Hindu script. There's no mention of the translation of the Ramayana and the Upanishads into Persian, into Urdu. There's no mention that even in the reign of Aurangzeb, every third Mansabdar was a Hindu. And there's obviously no mention that Aurangzeb gave grants to more temples than he demolished, and the temples he did demolish was out of political compulsion. In fact, the very name Aurangzeb was also given by Brahmins whose families were maintained by Aurangzeb for about 30 years. They said the Mughal emperor has been so good to us that we don't have to maintain a kitchen at home. The royal emperor sends us food every day, and he also sends us token money for maintenance, then we should do something for him. They built a colorful crown for the emperor who was known as Alamgir until then. And that is when they said every color suits him, and he became Aurangzeb. Nobody's told that today. If you are a Muslim today, or if you were a Muslim in the past, you've got to be a villain by according to this dispensation.
Wow. And how do you think this is going to impact the
It has impacted
just reading this?
drastically.
Like it's already started, yeah. So how do you
But
imagine the
not started, it's been going on for a long, long time now. 9, 10 years is a long time in the life of an individual. It may not be a long time for a civilization or for a country, but for an individual going through, it's a long time. I know of well placed Muslim intellectuals who have stopped taking meat dishes when they travel by train. I know of Muslims who do not greet you with Assalamu alaikum on the phone when they are in public space. There are Muslim boys and girls who are shunned in public schools. A couple of years ago, my daughters, who were maybe 11 or 12 at that time, not couple, maybe 3 years or so, they were boarding their school bus, and one of the classmates teased my daughter. You'll get a seat, first you say Jai Shri Ram. On another occasion, my elder daughter was told to go to Pakistan, and she was called Pakistani by a classmate. I put my foot down and fought my way through in that case with the class teacher and with the student and his parents concerned. But not everybody can do that. Today, when you go out with a beard at the airport and with that with a Muslim name, you're singled out. For last many months, I have not been able to travel. Very recently, I was supposed to go to Kochi for the Malayalam translation of this book, for the launch of the Malayalam translation of Being Muslim in Hindu India. I could not board the flight in Delhi because there was a spelling mistake in my boarding pass. At the same time, Siddharth Vadrajan, who was also going for the same function to release the book, he also had a spelling error on his boarding pass, but he was allowed to travel. Different folks, different strokes.
So coming on the institutional and political dimension, so one of the recurring critiques in your work is the silence or even the tacit approval from the highest levels of political leadership in the face of hate speech, communal violence. So how do you interpret this silence, and do you see it as a strategic omission, endorsement, or perhaps a reflection of a broader systemic issues? And how do you think this silence impacts the overall societal fabric and trust between communities? And let me join one more question to it. Like you also commented on the judiciary's shifting role from being a steadfast constitutional guardian to a more ambiguous actor in the current scenario. So, in your view, how has
That's
this
so
shift?
sweet when you say ambiguous. See, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Today, the political parties are not ready to speak up for Muslims, as I said earlier. And the same is true for our judiciary. We have people like Umar Khalid languishing in jail, Sharjeel, Gulfisha Fatma, and Miran Haider and others. How many times has there been an actual hearing in the Supreme Court or a High Court about their bail? In 2024, I think Umar Khalid's application was listed 23 times, and every time the next date was given. And this when Umar Khalid is a self-proclaimed atheist. But the fact that he's a Muslim name is good enough for the powers that be to do what they did. Same for Gulfisha Fatma and Sharjeel Imam. At the same time, we have noted journalists like Arnab Goswami, being released with almost a midnight hearing, and we understand and we know very well with what happened with Kappan, the Kerala journalist who was going to cover a rape case, who was on duty. And he came out only after 2 years after being arrested for no fault of his. He was just going there as a reporter to cover a particular crime there. The idea was to silence Muslims, you must arrest certain individuals to instill their feeling of fear. And largely they chose men to send a message to the women that we can do this to your men, then imagine what we can do to you. It reminded me of Pharaoh or Pharaoh and what he did to Muslims at the time of Hazrat Musa. And the political parties all along have kept quiet. How many times have you seen Sharad Pawar going to the house of a Muslim lynching victim in Latur. How many times has, when Ashok Gehlot was the Chief Minister of Rajasthan, did he go to Alwar where Pehlu Khan was killed and try to give some support to the family? Or how many times have you seen Rahul Gandhi speak up for people by name? Never. It's always minorities. It's always rules for all Indians, all citizens. You're scared of using the word Muslim. Well, it is unsettling as a Muslim when you see nobody is ready to speak up for you. But I think it's very shameful for the Hindu community that our political leaders across the spectrum think that Hindus will not vote for them if they speak up for justice. What does it say about a community when political leaders believe that the community doesn't stand for justice anymore, the community doesn't stand for equality or fraternity, the community's decisions are driven by hatred.
Thank you for answering that. I think you also commented on the media. I had next question about it. So, media, it plays a very crucial role in shaping the public discourse. So, in your analysis, like how has the Indian media facilitated the normalization of anti-Muslim rhetoric, and are there still independent voices within the media landscape that can help
If
in
you,
course
the
correction?
question I'll ask is, where is the independent media in India? You've got to look far and wide, and then maybe you'll come across one or two examples. That's about all. Telegraph does something, the Hindu does something, occasionally Deccan Herald, that's about all. The media, otherwise, is the handmaiden of the ruling party. They speak what the government wants them to speak, they write what the government wants them to write. All the headlines of Hindi and English channels are decided in the morning after a WhatsApp message from the PMO. There's one gentleman deputed for that particular purpose who tells them what to do. Accordingly, the media anchors start screaming in the evening. Has anybody among all the viewers we have today and ever seen our media talk in terms of economic jihad against Muslims, or the bulldozing of Muslim houses, the bulldozing of Muslim shops? We had this very, very sad case in Khargon in Madhya Pradesh, where rather two cases, where one they were Muslim boys standing on the roof of their house, and it was alleged that there was a Hanuman Jayanti procession going on, and one of the boys was accused of spitting on the procession. The next day, his house was demolished to the accompaniment of an orchestra. He was released 6 months later when he was found innocent. He was not just given a bail, he was acquitted. The media did not talk of that. The media talked of a Muslim boy spitting on a Hindu religious festival. Similarly, a Muslim man's shop was bulldozed in Khargon in Madhya Pradesh again because he was accused of pelting stones at a Hindu religious procession. When there was investigation by the Guardian newspaper of England, it was found that the man whose shop was demolished actually had no hands. He could not lift a cup of tea to drink. He could not help himself to a glass of water. His hands ended at his elbows, and he was accused of pelting stones at the procession. And as an instant punishment, his shop there of selling mobiles and repairing mobiles was bulldozed. Nobody talked of it. There was an age-old madrasa in Bihar with manuscripts going back almost 1,000 years, copies of the Quran and Hadith was set on fire. Nobody talked of it. Very recently, there have been attempts to change the character of Muslim places of worship. Even dargahs are not being left now, which used to bring Hindus and Muslims together on a platform. Even they are being attacked. And the media keeps quiet. The courts keep quiet. In fact, courts in many ways have given a hint for something like that to take place. After all, when the Babri Masjid judgment came in November 2019, our esteemed Supreme Court said that whatever happened in the past will remain in the past, and the Babri Masjid Ram Janmabhoomi case was an exception, and we will not change the core character of a place of worship as it stood on 15th August 1947 at any other place. That was in November 2019. By 2020 June, just 7 months later, including 3 months of COVID, there were applications filed against Gyanvapi Masjid and against Mathura Masjid and against Qutub Minar in Delhi. And then after that, it extended to Sambhal, Allahabad, Dhar in Madhya Pradesh, and many other places, including Ajmer. The courts at the session court level, at the district, at the high court level, were very happy to accept those applications, those petitions from Hindutva bodies, and in many cases they ordered a survey also. The Places of Worship Act of 1991, which prohibited any such thing, which said that every place of worship as it stood in 1947 will stay that way except Babri Masjid, was just cast aside. And who played basically footsie with these elements? These were the lower courts and the mid-level courts which accepted the petitions, and the other courts which said, okay, you can at least have a survey if you cannot change the character of a place of worship. What is the point of a place of a survey when you cannot change the character of a place? The media is very happy now to use even the Sambhal Masjid. They don't necessarily call it the Jama Masjid of Sambhal. They say the alleged place of Muslim worship or the controversial masjid. Where did the controversy come from? When a cemetery in Delhi and a mosque in Delhi, which was built during the time of Razia Sultan in 1236, he ruled only for 3.5 years, 1236 to 1240. That was demolished about 2 years ago. Not one English newspaper in Delhi covered it on page 1. Later, when the channels did cover, they said the mosque was built allegedly on the DDA land. The mosque was built in 1236. The DDA came up in 1956. Who was on whose land?
Thank you for highlighting that. Next, on a more personal level, like being a Muslim journalist and leading national newsroom, like how has your identity influenced the newsroom dynamics, editorial choices, or the coverage of sensitive issues? Could you share some instances where your perspective has
It's
notably
important to
altered?
speak up. See, it's important to speak up. You may not always be heard, but you will not be heard if you keep quiet.
Yeah,
When you
that's true.
speak up, you make your point in an editorial meeting, chances are you might find your way. You don't always find your way now. Okay. More
Could you
often
share
than
an instance where your perspective has like altered or enriched the editorial process in your organization? If
well,
you, if
I've written a lot about the cases of Gyanvapi, Mathura, Sambhal, and in all those cases I found my way. In the Waqf case, I did not.
And one more like a follow-up question to on the personal level. Again, have you personally encountered professional or social discrimination based on your identity, especially considering the current landscape which you discuss in your book? So, and how do you
I
navigate?
just now talked about the
You
most
said
recent
you
case
about yeah, but
about
how
the
about you?
airport, but there have been plenty of such cases. There have been plenty of such cases. Now, a few years ago, I had gone for my monthly grocery purchases at a local mall in Noida with my wife, who is in a hijab. And we were coming back with a trolley full of whatever kitchen stuff is required. And the guard decided to check each and every item. There were 50 odd items. Like you have clove and salt and sugar and rice and blah, blah, blah. And there were families behind us. And he very cursorily looked at their stuff, punched their bill, and they were allowed to go. And finally, I spoke to him in Urdu or Hindi, whatever you say. कि आप ये कैसे कर सकते हैं, ये लोग मेरे पीछे आए हैं, आप इनको जाने दे रहे हैं और मेरा सारा सामान देख रहे हैं. So he said, आदमी देख के काम करना पड़ता है.
It's crazy.
And that is when I switched over to English. I said, call your manager. And then a manager came and I said it very loudly. And until then, initially I spoke to the manager in Hindi. And that is when I switched over to the English, the manager's tone changed. Until then, because I was in kurta pajama and had a longer beard than what I have today, he took me to be an average Maulana who would probably not know English. He tried to browbeat me. When I switched over to English and I said, I know who is the proprietor of this place, Kishore Bayani, and I'm going to call him right now. I'm not going to take this nonsense. Then he apologized. I said, no, this apology won't do. You'll have to give me a written apology. So he gave me a written apology. But not everybody can stick his neck out the same way. It happens in the parking, it happens in the bank, it happens in the malls. It happens in the schools, it happens in colleges. It has become so normalized, like to question a Muslim's patriotism is treated as a joke. Just on this 15th August, my daughter works for a radio channel in Delhi, and they were having a little celebration in anticipation of the Independence Day on 15th August. A couple of her colleagues felt free to tell her in Hindi that you'd be celebrating Independence Day on 14th August. No? The insinuation was not lost on anybody. It's the same thing across in North India and Central India. Mercifully, it's better in the South.
That's really crazy out there. So thank you for sharing. Given the multi-pronged challenges you discussed, right from political exclusion to social stigma, what proactive strategies should the Muslim community explore to safeguard their rights while remaining civilly engaged? So, what are
If I'll
your
give you my answer, honest answer now, you will probably say that is escapism. So I'll answer both the parts of your question. I guess we have missed the bus when it comes to active role. For too long, we did not concentrate on we were supposed to do. You travel across India today, Northeast India in particular, and in other parts of India except South. Every 5, 6, 8 kilometers when you're driving on the highway, you will come across a small school by the name of St. Xavier's School, St. Paul's School, Mother Teresa School, and so on and so forth. How many times do you come across a school in the name of Hazrat Khadija or even our beloved Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? This from a community the letter of whose book, first letter of whose book is Iqra, read. We stopped concentrating on education. Instead of opening schools across the country, we reduced Islam to a set of rituals. Instead of treating Islam as a way of life, as spreading the message that Islam is a way of life where Allah's direction and guidance is with you. From the first breath you take from the cradle when the azan is pronounced to the final departure from this world when namaz janazah takes place. We forgot to tell that to our children, to our families, and to our non-Muslim brothers and sisters. I went to Nagaland a few years ago and I found people speaking English, and most of them were Christians, many of them were travelers. I finally went to a mosque, spoke to some locals, and then some people of Naga origin spoke to me in broken Hindi and some English. They said, when Muslim Jamaas come here, they speak in Urdu, they bring all their literature in Urdu. They don't bring anything in our language. We receive it out of respect and then people throw it the next. I went to Orissa, I heard the same thing from locals over there. I even interacted with some RSS people in Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. They said the same thing. They laughed at my face. When I said Muslims also work peacefully, though not as prominently as the Christians, they said your people come here for 3 days. He was probably referring to Tablighi Jamaat people without naming them. They come for 3 days, they talk in a language which the locals don't understand, and then they go. But you look at Christians, they come here, they live among these people for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. They speak and learn their language, then they preach in their language. What do the Muslims do? For them, Urdu seems more important than spreading the word of Allah. That is one of the tragedies. And we have made a clear demarcation between secular education and sacred education, which was started by Macaulay. We follow Macaulay, we don't follow the advice of our beloved Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We have even forgotten the teaching of the Quran, where we read Rabbi Zidni Ilma. We consider ilm to be only the ilm of Quran and Hadith as far as reading that is concerned. We don't follow science, we don't follow history. Even our madrasas in India to this day shy away from teaching English. They'll teach you Persian. They forget when these madrasas were set up during the reign of the Mughals, Persian was the court language. It could get you a job at the Mughal court. Today, when you read Persian, it doesn't get you a job. They refrain from teaching Hindi or English. They will teach at best Urdu. Urdu is not the language of Islam. Urdu is not the language of economy. You have to teach English, you have to teach Arabic. And as far as the other part is concerned, what is the way forward? Establish schools, establish channels, news channels, establish newspapers, magazines, and for heaven's sake, do not call them Muslim publications. Call them like any secular publication. Treat every sports event, every cultural event, cover everything, cover politics. But when it comes to any issue affecting the life and times of the minorities, the Muslims in particular, speak up, take a stand according to Islam. Do not shy away at that time. At the same time, cover the parliament, cover all the political parties, all the ministries, like any newspaper does. Because if you just keep harping on one society, then it will be a case of Salim writing and Riaz reading, which is something we don't need to do today. And finally, the important thing is Allah Ta'ala has shown us a way out of every problem. The Quran tells us through Surah Qaf ayat 16 that He is closer to us than our jugular vein. And every Muslim, practicing Muslim, at least 17 times a day, he says, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. मैं तेरी इबादत करता हूं. I pray to you only and I seek help from you only. Do that. If every Muslim starts frequenting the mosque 5 times a day, things will change. Things have to change. Unfortunately, we have excluded 50% of the society from most of the mosques in the country. Mosques in India are a male zone only.
Yeah, that they were really great suggestion for Muslim community, and that was also gonna be my last question. But you already covered a lot of things. You argue also about the responsibility for
I did a book called Women in Masjid some 5 years ago with
yeah.
Bloomsbury. That brought about some change in the society. Like there were women organizations which took the book in 17 or 16 cities across the country, and they spoke to the imams concerned and fought their way through, and they were permitted to offer their namaz in masjid. The unfortunate part is most of the women do not know how to offer namaz by Jamaat. You can't blame it on them because they have not been to a masjid in
Never
their
been
life.
allowed inside. Yeah,
Yeah. And allow is not the right word. It is their right.
true.
The
I would agree.
Quran talks of establishing prayer at a number of places, but it doesn't talk of discriminating against women. It talks of establishing prayer. When you establish prayer, you can only do it in a group. You can continue to pray in your bedroom or drawing room all life, but you will not be able to establish prayer unless you go to masjid and offer namaz by Jamaat. It's same for you, it's the same for me. When every Eid in India, a Muslim man dresses up early in the morning in shining white kurta pajama and he takes his 10-year-old son, 8-year-old son with him to the masjid. Why does he leave behind his 14-year-old daughter at home, even for the Eid namaz? Same for Taraweeh, same for Jummah. The change has to come from within.
And the next question, like you also argue that the responsibility for change doesn't rest solely on the Muslim community. So, what message would you offer to progressive members of the majority community who are eager to
They are
resist
fighting our
this?
battle. They are fighting our battle. We have to give them our shoulder. You see people like Prashant Bhushan, you see people like Harsh Mandar, and so many top-notch advocates across the country beyond Prashant also. They are speaking up in parliament, people like Kapil Sibal and others, and they're not charging for it. They speak up for a mosque which is under petition, they speak up for a madrasa, they speak up for a lynching victim. It's for the Muslims to raise their voice and build bridges. We must understand nobody can live in isolation. We have to live with the larger Indian society, of which our Hindu brothers are in a majority. The fact that Islam has thrived here since 623 AD to now means that there has been a peaceful relationship between Hindus and Muslims, barring incidents of violence. We cannot afford to be living on an island in exclusion from everybody else. We cannot be thinking Islam is for Muslims, Quran is for Muslims. When a Hindu boy or a Hindu girl is murdered, killed by a Muslim, we must speak up for the victim. Allah Ta'ala is Adil. He loves justice. We must do justice. We must be seen doing justice. At the same time, we must not be intimidated, browbeaten. If there are certain casualties, if there are certain injuries along the way, certain denial of rights, have faith in Allah. This world is but an examination hall. The true life has to come after we breathe our last year.
Absolutely true. And so I'm pretty much done with some question I had about the book. So do you want to discuss anything else about this book, or maybe some of the books I mentioned at the start of introducing you? Do you want to just highlight a quick
Just a
thing, what
couple
to
of
expect
things.
for most
And
of the
don't take
readers?
it as promotion or any such thing.
Yeah,
You just talked of Lynch files at the beginning.
yeah,
And
I do have
when this book was released in February 2019.
Mrs.
So when I
Yes.
did this book, it came out in 2019. It records all the lynching instances till August 2018. And I hoped and prayed that a sequel to this would not be required. Unfortunately, I proved wrong, and I just signed a contract with Bloomsbury, wherein an enlarged version of this book will be released next year, encapsulating all the lynching instances from 2019 to 2025. Similarly, my other book of Saffron Flags and Skullcaps, which you referred to, there'll be a part two of that also, because that also talks of discrimination against Muslims in politics and society and everywhere. So those are two things. But the good part is there is a history book coming up wherein we are trying to fight this mythologization of history. The government is trying to palm off mythology as history. So I've engaged 9 top medieval India historians, people like Irfan Habib Saab, Narayani Gupta, Ali Nadim Rizavi Saab, Farhat Hassan Saab, Amar Faruqi, Raziuddin Aqil, etc., to give a chapter each and talk of the pluralist nature of the Mughal Empire of India. The book should come out in July next year. This is part of our continued battle with for justice and to speak up for the right things.
Thank you for walking us through that. Do we have questions from the audience at this point in time? Gave rise to new civilizational value. Now, rise of Hindutva is also a civilizational shift. So, it's a comment or a question for you.
Yeah, see, it is not a civilizational shift, it has been an ongoing process. When 1847 happened, which is also called the First War of Independence, the Britishers singled out Muslims for the revolt against them. The Muslims had been ruling India since 1206, and they felt that okay, they had to get rid of the British to continue with their rule. So there was large scale killing of Muslim ulama in particular and Muslim masses in general, as a result of which in 1866 Deoband Seminary came up. Darul Uloom Deoband came up in 1866 to train a new generation of Muslims who will be custodians of India and who will be sound on Islamic principles. That is how Deoband came up. Unfortunately, the problem for Deoband is it came up with the best ideals, but it has not been able to live up to those ideals. It has been caught in a time warp. Like to this day, Deoband does not admit women in its classes. To this day, they don't talk of CBSE syllabus, secular syllabus. It suffers from the same prejudices which we accuse of the larger Muslim society of nursing. From 1866 to 2025, Deoband has not produced one single Muslim Hafiza. So that is one thing. And you're talking, coming to Hindutva part, during our freedom struggle, the Hindutva elements had started raising their head without using the word Hindutva right from 1905, 1906, with people like Bal Gangadhar Tilak using the Ganesha procession and Vinayak Chaturthi, etc., to talk of nationalism. And then we had people like Madan Mohan Malviya and others doing likewise, and Chitranjan Das Sahab, and many of them became the presidents of the Congress. It was a very weird kind of scenario at that time. Somebody was the president of the Congress and also a member of Hindu Mahasabha. Somebody was the president of Hindu Mahasabha 1 year and next year the secretary of the Congress. Congress was supposed to be secular. Hindu Mahasabha was supposed to be for the majority community only. So that has been going on. The Congress party had a lot of space and love for Hindutva element, and it continues to this day, except that BJP has trumped it up.
Okay, so we have three more questions. I think we have from Kamar Khan. So, fully understand the situation of Muslims deteriorating day by day. The traditional Muslim organizations are running out of ideas. I think the problem is at Ijtimai level rather than infiradi. So, then we also need to strive at Ijtimai level. Do you have any suggestion for a practical solution at the Ijtimai level? I think is trying
Could
to
you
add.
rephrase the question, please?
So he's saying the situation of Muslims is deteriorating. The traditional Muslim organizations are running out of ideas, and he thinks the problem is more of organizational ijtimai level, not infiradi issues. What you said. So
It's both. It's both. You cannot, in today's time, basically say that the individual is not responsible. Yes, organizations are responsible. I'll give you one example. The RSS came up in 1925. They are celebrating their 100 years now. The Tablighi Jamaat came up only 1 or 2 years later. Where is the RSS today? Where is the Tablighi Jamaat today in India? RSS, with all its lopsided structure, with all its bigotry, its prejudices, was able to, at the first level, establish little schools at the village, at the town level, Shishu Vidyalaya and Saraswati Vidyalaya and so on, where they were taught to hate Muslims. With a peculiar brand of history, the kids read in little booklets, and they were also taught English, Hindi, maths, etc., like any other student in any other school. How many schools did Tablighi Jamaat establish? None. Then you come to Jamiat Ulama Hind. How many schools has Jamiat Ulama Hind established in 1919 when it was set up? It played a crucial role in our freedom struggle. After freedom struggle, it has done a lot of good work when it comes to fighting cases for Muslims in the court and other development part, but that development doesn't extend to education. If at all it talks of education, it talks in terms of opening a madrasa which would produce a Quran Hafiz, but nothing more than that. The need of the hour was to establish schools, as I said earlier in this talk. Unfortunately, the Muslim Jamaats have been lagging behind badly. But there was one note of positivity in recent years, and that came from Jamaat Islami Hind. It is the only Muslim body, as far as I know, which has a women's wing. If you start giving voice to women, your problems begin to be sorted out at the initial level. Jamaat Islami Hind is the only Muslim organization which has a space for women in its mosque in the country. In Delhi, about 4 years ago, they came up with a new mosque, and they reserved the first floor entirely for Muslim, and it can accommodate about 2,000 odd Muslim women. And they do go there for namaz on Eid and even Fridays and other times also. Why cannot other Muslim bodies do the same? You bring Muslim women to the masjid, the children will follow. When the child starts coming to masjid from a young age, he learns about Islam from an early age. When you when you give the Friday khutbah, you do not make it just a ritual to be read out from a book or something you have learned by heart. You talk of contemporary problems as it was supposed to be. And then the community is aware of their rights, their responsibilities, and their challenges.
thank you. The next question is from Mr. Khalid, who wants to know your take that we are asked to admit our children in Muslim managed institutions. So, what is your take on that?
Excuse me, what did he say? I lost you.
Yeah. So, Mr. Khalid wants to ask, nowadays we are asked to admit our wards in Muslim managed institution. Your take?
That is one of the options, but how different is it from an RSS school? It is important that they will learn about Islam, but Islam is not supposed to be practiced in exclusion, in isolation. Islam is supposed to be practiced in larger society. You establish schools where children of all religions are admitted. You keep a class of theology where you talk about Islam, where you also talk of Vedas, where you also talk of Bible, you also talk about the Torah, and teach the child according to his or her religion. There will be a time when Hindu kids will again be interested in knowing about Islam. This was the practice during the time of the Sultanate in Delhi, during the time of Mughals also. Otherwise, how do you think people like Dr. Rajendra Prasad went to a madrasa? Dr. Raja Ram Mohan Roy went to a madrasa. Our famous Urdu writer Premchand went to a madrasa. Do not close the doors of your madrasa, of your school to a non-Muslim. Do not close the doors of your masjid to a Muslim woman.
Thank you for answering that. I will take one question from sister who has asked, Sister Faria, like, what advice would you give to Muslim women who want to be more active in public life, media, or social initiatives, but face societal stereotypes? So,
Speak up, write. If you cannot write in a newspaper, doesn't matter. You can't write in a newspaper or a magazine. Use a portal like the Wire, the Print, etc. Write over there. If you cannot write there also, use Insta, Facebook, Twitter, etc. But make yourself heard. There are ways of talking about Islam on Twitter, on Facebook. There are ways of talking of the challenges the community is facing. You don't have to join a political party for that. You don't have to take the help of a newspaper editorial for it. Now, social media is your best friend. Embrace it.
next question, and just to
Somebody is
comment,
asking about Islamophobia. I read the question in passing. Could you talk about it?
Islamophobia. Let me just scroll through the question. Okay, my point is to avoid. Okay, nowadays, okay, I think he was responding to Mr. Khalid. My point is to avoid the Islamophobia and discrimination, etc., not madrasa. He kind of commented to your response on Muslim
See,
match.
Islamophobia is a reality in the colleges and schools in today's India. You have to live with it. But it doesn't mean that if your child has to face those comments, you withdraw your child from the school. You give that kind of moral courage to the child that he or she is able to present the right picture of Islam. Tell him or her what was Islamophobia like when Surah Maryam was revealed, when Surah Ibrahim was revealed at that time, and what was the persecution of Sahaba at that time. In comparison to that, what we are facing today is very negligible.
Next, I'll take from Nadeem Ahmed. So, how other minorities, Muslim minorities in other parts of the world, are safeguarding their interests? What can we learn from them?
See, wherever Muslims are in a minority, things have not been easy like in a place like India or even in Sri Lanka, in Burma, in China, because there is rampant Islamophobia across the world. But at the same time, there are Muslims living happily in the US, in Canada, etc. There are two reasons for it. When Muslims are, say, 10, 15, 20%, they become prominent. And that is when the problem arises. When Muslims are invisible or they are only a microscopic minority of the society, then there are no problems. Like in the US, you can easily take your wife to a mosque or your daughter or your son to a mosque and nobody will bother about it. But if you do so in China, it is not quite the same thing. If you do it in Burma, it's not quite the same thing. Same in Sri Lanka. And obviously in India, it becomes very challenging in many parts of the country. So it's different strokes in different countries. Each has a different history and different social milieu. But what is important is to hold on to your values and try to meet people across religions. When people get to know you, only then will they get to know Islam through you. In Delhi, some social organizations had a wonderful campaign to bring about larger understanding between people of different religions. The campaign was titled Mere Ghar Aake To Dekho, wherein Hindus were invited to Muslim houses to spend a day with a Muslim family, and Muslims were invited to Hindu families to spend a day with them. Like I was interviewed by New York Times about 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago. First, they interviewed me for about 4 hours at my home, and then they sent their photographer to spend a day with us. The idea was not just to take a couple of pictures of the family or the author concerned, but to understand the social milieu of a Muslim family, the ethos of working, the interpersonal relationship, the language, and everything. And when we invite more non-Muslims to our house, things will get better.
Jazakallah khair, Mr. Ziya Islam. Thank you so much for your incisive and
Can
thought-provoking
I just
reflection.
apologize at the end?
Sure.
there would have been some sections which would have been disturbing for you or some of your viewers, but I could not help it because to go through constant rampant Islamophobia 24/7, it may be somewhere down the line percolates to your writing and it affects your speech. Please bear with me.
Okay. Jazakallah for your comments, and thank you for all the incisive and thoughtful, provoking reflection we had today with you. Your work is a vital contribution to the ongoing effort to document, resist, and reimagine the place of Muslims in India's democratic and secular framework. We at the Idrak Foundation remain committed to engaging with such voices and fostering a space where nuance, principled conversation continue to thrive. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair for having me. Grateful to you, to the organizers, and thank you all, your wonderful viewers.